Hello, everyone. I'm Bo from Brutal Commentary, and today I'm going to be breaking down our first fight for UFC Vegas 113. Bautista versus Oliveira is going to take place February 7th in the Meta Apex. No longer is it just the UFC Apex; they've now renamed it the Meta Apex. You know, Obviously, there's not much to it other than it's going to be able to house more people. So I guess that is something. They at least can fight more of a crowd, I suppose. Overall, this is going to be our first fight night of 2026. So it'll be kind of interesting, at least from my perspective as a fan. My perspective as a fan, to just see how a fight night will play out on Paramount Plus in comparison to the back-to-back pay-per-views, numbered events we just witnessed, right? Because with the numbered events, we had a higher quality production, really good pre-fight shows, or I guess I should say those previews, the cold opens, just simply much better promotion for the numbered events. So we have now a fight night, and one that takes place in the Meta Apex. So part of me is very curious to see if there's going to be a sort of a dip in the quality when it comes to, like, say, trailers or the promos, any of that stuff when it comes to the fight nights. Now, granted, I think because it's the Meta Apex, it'll probably be less than what we've seen, but I think a fight night that takes place outside of it, like next week or the card in 2 weeks, Strickland versus Hernandez, is going to take place in Houston, Texas. I assume that one's going to be much better promoted, much better trailer and promos and all that stuff, because that's a very important fight night. Because, like I said, it takes place in an arena in front of a crowd, and a much more important fight. But still, I digress. As I'll say this real quick before I get to the first fight, I think this is going to be a very fun card. There's some great fights on this card. The main event, Mario Bautista versus Vinicius Oliveira. That's a great fight, dude. That is a spectacular high-level bantamweight matchup against two guys in the lower rankings of the bantamweight division. But make no mistake, these two are absolutely great. Bautista was surging up until the loss to Umar Nurmagomedov. And I still think Bautista is much better than what his ranking says. And he's now taking on the dark horse of the division, Vinicius Oliveira, who, Lock Dog has not lost in the UFC, and it's on a really good streak in general. Then that co-main event, which, some people says should be the main event. I can see why, but still, nonetheless, it's a great fight. Amir Albazi versus Kyoji Horiguchi. Obviously, there's kind of a big chance for Kyoji to get into the title picture if he takes out Albazi, who's in the top 5 or top 6. Phenomenal fight. Two well-rounded flyweights, and one that I think should be a good scrap. And then there's some real fun fights on this card for me, like Mikhail Alexiejczuk versus Marc-Andre Barriault. That's a slugfest at middleweight for sure. One of these two is going to sleep. Gene Matsumoto versus Farid Basharat. That's probably the hardest fight to predict on this entire card. And then you still have some prospects too, like Donchenko. Colin Wang's on the card. There's overall some good matchups on this card, I think. But without further ado, let's get to our first fight. In our first matchup, Priscilla Cachoeira takes on Klaudia Sygula. So overall, I don't think this is like a super important fight for women's bantamweight division. Obviously, there's some stakes involved for either fighter. I think if whoever comes off a loss might get their walking papers. But for sure, it's not one that, you look at it first glance, it's like very technical. But I think there's still going to be a fun dynamic because it's a classic pressure versus structure matchup. And those are often the fights that tell you the most about who a fighter really is. And I think when things stop going according to plan, and this, that's when I think the fight turns up a bit. This isn't about rankings or, like I said, long-term divisional impact. Maybe a bit because it is women's bantamweight, but not that much. This is about who can impose their will when comfort disappears. And historically, I think that's where Priscilla Cachoeira shines. And like I said, I'm also doing something a little different. I am telling you who I think is going to win off the bat, and then just explaining my reasoning. So without further ado, let's get down to the breakdown. Starting with Cachoeira. Her style is built around forward momentum and damage. From the opening seconds, she looks to close distance, take space, and force the exchanges. And Cachoeira, she's a power striker who does not mind getting hit if it means she can hit you harder in return. That's exactly how she knocked out Jazian Nunes, which was absolutely impressive, like hitters. They were, intercepted Nunes with the other uppercut and knocked her out stiff. As well as Ariane Lipski de Silva, too. Priscilla Cachoeira has real power in the division for sure. And yeah, obviously, her game is not about finesse or precision. It's about pressure, physicality, and breaking opponents over time. And usually speaking, too, Priscilla Cachoeira has a good chin and is able to take a lot of the shots. Now, I say this when she is coming off a pretty bad knockout loss to Jocelyn Edwards. But granted, Jocelyn Edwards seems to be on a roll right now and has shown really good power as of late. So obviously, if the chin is not fully gone for Cachoeira, she still has, I think, opportunities to get some wins in this division. Now, obviously, she's had one major weakness. That is her wrestling and grappling. It's just been the Achilles heel to her entire game. Whether it was Gillian Robinson, Miranda Maverick, or Jasmine Jasovicius, it didn't really matter. If she fights a really good grappler, she is screwed, basically. Now, that being said, I don't think Klaudia Sygula is of that level of grappler. And I'll say this for sure. She operates on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. For Sygula, her striking is a bit more cleaner, more measured than Cachoeira. Sygula wants to stay balanced, pick her shots, and fight at a pace where she can see everything coming, basically. And Sygula is usually at her best when she has space to work and when the fights stay technical and when the exchanges are controlled rather than any form of chaotic. Sygula relies more on timing and positioning rather than brute force, and that's how she beat Ariane. Excuse me, man, I don't know. I feel well today. I don't know what it is. Anyway, as I was saying, that's how Sygula was able to beat Ariane Alexieva, who no longer in the UFC. Overall, then seeing how these styles clash, I think this fight hinges entirely on who gets to dictate the terms. If Sygula can keep this at range, circle consistently, and avoid being backed up against the cage, she can land the cleaner shots and frustrate Cachoeira early. And Cachoeira's defense is far from airtight, and she can be hit on the way in. The problem is that Sygula has to maintain that discipline for extended stretches. Because Cachoeira only needs a few moments to turn the tide. Because Cachoeira's pressure isn't about footwork as much as it is just her overall presence, and she walks opponents down, corrals the pocket, and forces reactions. And when fighters start backing up, they eventually are going to hit that fence. And once that happens, Cachoeira's offense is going to start escalating. And in close quarters, she's stronger. She hits harder and is far more comfortable throwing in volume. Whereas Sygula, I don't know why I keep saying that, I mean Sygula, doesn't want long exchanges in tight spaces, but that's exactly where this fight is likely going to spend a lot of time. And durability, I think, also plays a major role here. As I said, Cachoeira is coming off a bad knockout loss, but I would think if the chin is not gone, and granted, I don't think Sygula hits remarkably that hard. I think Cachoeira should be able to absorb the damage and keep coming forward. And, that could change the psychology of the fight, as when clean shots don't slow someone down, that hesitation will start to creep in. And we've seen Sygula sort of give up on herself, like when she fought Melissa Mullins, and Mullins just simply mauled her. Obviously, different style and different type of opponent, but still. Cachoeira has this sort of bullying style that I think is going to frustrate Sygula a lot and just force her to be reactive and maybe have some doubt in her mind. So, for my official prediction, I'm going to go with Priscilla Cachoeira. I do think Klaudia Sygula will have success early. I wouldn't be surprised. She's likely to land the cleaner shots, manage distance better in the opening minutes, and win some of the early exchanges. The key difference is sustainability. Can she keep the fight clean for the entirety of 15 minutes or less if she's able to get the finish? Or does that pressure eventually take over? And I lean heavily towards the latter. And I think as the rounds go on, I expect Cachoeira to close distance more consistently, force fence exchanges, and turn the fight into a physical battle, whether it's through accumulative damage or just sheer volume. And I think Cachoeira's aggression becomes just too overwhelming for Sygula. So once again, my official prediction, I'm going to go with Priscilla Cachoeira, and I'm going to pick her. I think she can get the knockout in this one, to be honest with you. She hits incredibly hard for the division. You've seen it hit, and she has that type of one-shot power that you rarely see in women's MMA. Hey, so I'm going to go with Priscilla Cachoeira once again, and I'm going to pick her via knockout. With that being said, that's been my breakdown of this matchup. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below on who you think's going to win. Until then, I've been Bo from Brutal Commentary. I thank you all for listening. And remember, stay calm, stay respectful, and enjoy the violence. I'll see y'all next time.